Hey, so in this video, I'm going to be, let me make this smaller, addressing comments by at Sabrina underscore WOLDT. Um, she, it's probably a C, Sabrina. I'll just say she. She left some great comments, and yeah, correct me if I'm wrong, Sabrina. I don't want to misgender you. Okay, no, but no, I mean, so I want to go over those comments right now. I said I was going to, and may as well do it now while I still thinking about it. So let's see. Well, I replied to some of them, and then he or she replied. So let's see. Okay, so let's read this one. I'll read the whole thing. My position is that everything has an origin except God. This is the same as saying he has always existed. They were like quoting me, I guess, or essentially quoting me. So yeah, yeah. I mean, you're right, obviously. If you add up all the energy, all the spins of the galaxies, all the matter, and everything else in the universe, the total come out to zero. They said this before, and I was saying, like, I don't know how we could know that. Like, basically, I didn't say what your source is, but I was basically saying, like, yeah, how can we know that? What's your source? It suggests that it is possible for the universe to have formed without requiring a net amount of energy to be created. Let me put it simply so you can understand where I'm going with this. When the universe eventually reaches its final state, there may be no usable energy left to perform work. Okay. I'm really trying to make sure I understand this. Stars will have burned out, galaxies will have faded, and the universe could approach a state of maximum entropy, often referred to as heat death. Right, yeah, I mean, I'm pretty familiar with that term. One hypothesis is that given enough time, quantum fluctuations, or other physical processes could allow a new universe to emerge without requiring any external energy input. While small decreases in entropy have been observed in certain microscopic systems, whether this could ever lead to the birth of an entirely new universe remains speculative and has not been demonstrated. And then it linked, which I actually didn't click on this. May as well do it right now. Whoops. Why did it? What? That's weird. Okay. Paper for entropy decreasing. My point is that if the total energy of the universe is effectively zero, then it is possible to imagine a universe arising through natural processes rather than requiring something outside the universe to create it. Right. So, oh, that's annoying. Is it this stupid? Hold on a second. Not secure. That's dumb. Not secure. Man, I ain't worried about hackers. If someone hacks me, I'll hack them. No. I mean, I am kind of worried about hackers. It doesn't keep me up at night, but okay, site settings maybe? Blocked. Don't know how, okay, well, that sucks. 404. Okay, so there's 403 other errors. Anyway, Vsauce made a video on that. Anyway, getting off topic again. So, I mean, I guess I can still pretty much understand his or her position. I'll just say that. His or hers, since I'm not sure. I mean, I looked at their videos. Oh, you just said they. That means it's a pronoun, man. Yeah, because I don't know the gender of the person. Yeah, this is, I mean, interesting. Yeah, I mean, mostly guys like to talk about all this stuff, so I'll just say he. Earlier I said she, but whatever. So, I get what you're saying, I think. I fully understand it. And I guess I still have a question, which is, well, I guess that's kind of what the paper, well, no, that's the paper for entropy decreasing. So I guess I still have a question of how do we know this, that it all comes out to zero? Especially because, like, aren't there galaxies that we haven't observed? Or no, maybe I'm wrong there. I mean, if the universe is, well, some people think the universe is infinite. Personally, I'm not sure. But if it is, then there could be more galaxies that we haven't observed, and then we'd have to factor that in too, right? Just a question. Without requiring. Yeah, so it would suggest that, but it doesn't mean necessarily that that's true, right? I don't think it does. So I think that's an important distinction. I'm just rereading this to make sure I understand what he's saying. Yeah, the heat death. Right. So the heat death. Constant fluctuations. Right. So because that entropy is naturally like fluctuating. Observed. So it's not been demonstrated, remains speculative. I guess that's the thing that I would sort of bring attention to. We don't know that. Could be, but we don't know that. So if that's your point, I mean that's your point. I mean, I would say yes, like sure, it's possible to imagine that, but it doesn't mean that just because you can imagine it doesn't mean that it can happen necessarily. So maybe we think that it can happen, but we're wrong somewhere. Especially when you're talking about like questions as deep as this or as big as this, maybe. Yeah, I mean, if it's a total energy of the universe is effectively zero. So effectively zero, right? Meaning, yeah, like there could be a heat death. I say when it eventually reaches its final state. Do we know for a fact that that'll happen? Because I'm not sure. I mean, what do I know? But just a couple things, I guess, mostly about psychology. But this is kind of out of my depth. I'll be honest. I'm kind of perhaps overextending myself, although I'm trying not to. But yeah, so I get your point, and I would say, yeah, it's possible. Like maybe so. It's okay. I think that's. So I addressed that. So yeah, because I said this too. Yeah, I've made videos about God and how I know. What was it recently? I'll show you if. Well, chances are you're watching this, Sabrina. Which video is it? This one. That's very long, but I'm pretty sure I talk about it. Well, you seem to have a, let's say, long attention span, though that's not technically accurate, but so maybe you will watch the whole thing. Gosh, sorry, that scares me every time. Gosh dang. I gotta move out of here, man. That is so loud. I mean, it's not so loud, but to me it's startling. Anyway, so yeah, this video, I addressed that pretty in detail from what I remember. So I would check that out if you want to know more of my thoughts on that. Whoops. But let's see, now there's another comment here, right? I'm pretty sure. Okay, so yeah. This one I really wanted to talk about. Okay, so no convincing evidence that God exists. People who always may disagree with this next time. Okay, if God exists, then by definition, he would technically be an extraterrestrial being, an intelligence that exists beyond Earth. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. I don't disagree with that. Likewise, there are hypotheses such as the zoo hypothesis, a proposed solution to the Fermi paradox. Yeah, I don't know what that is, so I better look that up. Try to understand this. Okay, I see. So solution. Okay, it suggests that advanced aliens civilization may intentionally avoid. Right. Okay. Yeah. This is only a hypothesis. There's no evidence that it is true, so I don't claim that it is. Fair enough. See, like, it's fantastic. Like, you use critical thinking. It's awesome. Like, thank you. I apply the same standard to God. Without evidence, I don't claim certainty either way. Okay. So I guess that's where I'll say I am going to read the rest of the comment, but I don't think that it makes sense to apply the same standard to God. Because at least, now it kind of depends on what you mean by God. If you mean an all-powerful, supernatural, I guess if he's all-powerful, he would also be eternal, which is the God I believe in. If that's what you mean, then I just don't see how we can compare. I mean, we can kind of compare God to aliens, but, well, I don't think we really can, though, can we? I don't think so. So I'll just say that. I don't think that makes sense to apply the same standard to God. But you're saying that's what you do, so let's keep reading. I don't claim certainty either way without evidence, right? There are many arguments for God that, in my opinion, can be questioned or challenged. True. That doesn't mean they're wrong necessarily, but true. For example, some religious people reject evolution. However, we have directly observed evolution through natural selection. Okay, yeah. So I'll say I definitely believe in some form of evolution, right? Definitely. So, I mean, I think you'd have to be intellectually daft to deny that some kind of evolution has occurred and does occur. What I don't believe is that we've evolved over millions of years from, I think it's from technically apes, not monkeys, but apes. I believe that's right. And I think that's right. But I don't believe that. I think we have no idea how long 1 million years is, let alone, 500,000, even 500,000 or a million years, let alone millions. And I think that almost no matter, not quite, but almost no matter how much evidence we have that makes it look like that insanely long amount of time has taken place, or it's taken that long for, say, this trait to evolve, we can't say with absolute certainty that, and I'll go into why in a moment, that this, whatever it is, happened millions of years ago, simply because, well, not just because, but one reason is because I feel like to have really strong evidence for that, there would have to be a human component where, like, someone took a specimen. I was talking the other day with an atheist about this, but say like someone took a dinosaur skeleton and they observed it, like, all their life. Let's say that's all they did. Then they, like, pass it on to their children. They observed it. They preserved it and observed it and made notes about what happened. And, like, that process would have to continue for years, like generations, and it would take forever to get to just 1 million years. And then I would say, like, that would be really strong evidence that, oh, okay, yes, like, now I'm talking, maybe that's not so much about evolution, but that's, well, I think it has to do with, dinosaur skeleton. And so now let me make this clear. I'm not educated or knowledgeable on or about all of the evidence that we have for evolution and, like, what the scientists claim. So perhaps I should do some more research. But I think my point kind of remains, which is we would just have to say, oh, this happened millions of years ago. It's like, I don't think we can really say that unless we just have an insane amount of extraordinarily strong evidence to support that, and evidence and reasoning to support that. And I haven't seen or heard of such evidence. Now again, I'm ignorant, so maybe we have more evidence than I think. But I probably should read some books on that. That would be a good idea. But anyway, so I'll say that. Anyway, back to the comment. So yeah, natural selection, like, yeah, definitely it exists. Like, just not the evolution that's, what is it? It's the origin of the universe happened, or the universe first came into being, I think it's 3.1 billion years ago, which I think is just preposterous to even say that we could possibly know that with any degree of confidence or certainty. But I'm pretty sure that's kind of the scientific consensus. Most people think, I think it's 3.1. Could be wrong, but yeah. So anyway, it's a bit of a rant, but back to the comment. All right. One well-known example is the Galapagos finches. These birds descended from a common ancestor that spread across different islands. Because each island had different environments and food sources, the birds gradually developed different beak shapes and sizes. Today, there are many distinct species, each adapted to its environment. This is an observable example of evolution through natural selection. Yeah, so, I mean, I would say, I'm not going to deny that is true. I mean, I don't know much about Galapagos finches or finches in general. But what I am going to dispute is the fact that, maybe they have a common ancestor and they spread across different islands. But the main thing that I dispute and disagree with is the amount of time that took for them to evolve and become different than their ancestor. And even that I'm not certain about, but I'm not going to dispute it because I'm not knowledgeable enough to say, no, they didn't have a common ancestor. Like, I mean, they probably did. Like, I think, probably so. I think that's what I believe. They probably do have a common ancestor. So, and they develop different beak shapes and sizes. there's a bunch of different species. Yeah, each adapted to its environment. But what I dispute is the span of time that it took for that to happen. Like, which I don't know. I mean, you didn't say like how long it took, but I would guess it's the common consensus, at least between people who believe in the type of evolution that I don't believe in, would be thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years. Like, that's how long it took. And I just think that, no, I don't believe that's possible, because I believe the Earth has only been around for 6,000 to 10,000 years. So anyway, all right. I think that's all there is to address there. Another example is selective breeding. While humans guide the process, it still works through the same fruit flies biological principles as natural selection. Dogs, cattle, pigeons, and many crops have changed dramatically over generations because certain traits were consistently selected. Right. So, I mean, don't have much to say about that. I mean, I would say I agree. Like, yeah. Another question I have concerns the idea that God is perfect, knows everything, and sees every possible future. If that is true, why do events in the Bible unfold the way they do? It's a good question. Let's see, how much longer is the comment? It's pretty long. You leave some pretty long comments, but it's okay. Take Cain, for example. After killing his brother Abel, Cain receives the mark of Cain, which protects him from being killed. If Cain was made unkillable, what eventually happened to him? Whenever I have asked Jehovah's Witnesses about this, I'm usually told, I'll get back to you, but I've never received an answer. Yeah, so, well, that's Jehovah's Witnesses, and they, from what I understand, they get a lot of things wrong. Like, they believe a lot of things that aren't consistent with what the Bible says, from what I understand. Anyway. So, from what I understand, and I read this story recently, so I'm pretty confident about this. The mark that Cain received was not to protect him from being killed. It was to protect him from being killed by another man or by another human. Okay, so that's an important distinction. So it's not that he was made unkillable. No, it was just made that no man. Basically, the mark was like a signal saying, no man shall lay his hands on this man. Like, no man shall murder him. So that's what I would say to that. Yeah, I'll get back to you. It's like, see, that's the thing. It's probably because they don't really know the story. They don't know that distinction. And matter of fact, I mean, let me just make sure I'm right about this. I'm pretty certain, but what was mark of Cain? Let's just see what the mark looked like. To prevent anyone from attacking or killing Cain by promising a severe sevenfold vengeance upon his attacker. Right, exactly. So pretty much exactly what I said, although I forgot about that part, the sevenfold vengeance. But yeah, so it's not that he was made unkillable. Okay, so there's your answer. Another question is about morality. If God is perfectly good and Satan is evil, why does God appear to directly cause or command more deaths in the Bible than Satan does? How should that be understood? All right, so I thought about this earlier. Hold on. All right, I'll address that in the next part in a second. But yeah, so a good question. Now, my answer to this, I think the best answer I have to this is this. The times that God has, say, wiped out thousands or maybe even millions of humans in the Bible have been because of the fact that humanity had become so corrupt and so steeped in sin that God concluded, essentially, that it would be better if they just were all dead. At least that portion of humanity. For example, the flood, right? God flooded the earth. But here's the thing: is so you say, why does God appear to directly cause or command more deaths in the Bible than Satan does? Okay, well, sin comes from Satan. You could say. You could also say it comes from the corruptness of the human heart. Something like that. But if we go back to the Garden of Eden, Satan was the one who convinced the woman to eat of the fruit that God commanded them not to eat of. And Adam, like an idiot, which again, I'm sure I would have done the same thing. But he also ate of it because, Eve showed it to him. And so if we look through it with that lens, we kind of see, well, did God really cause or command more deaths than Satan? Or is it that humanity was in sin? And again, you could attribute that to Satan, and I would say that's not inaccurate to say humanity sinned so much because now humanity chose to disobey God. So we got to be careful there. But I think you get my point, kind of where I'm going with this. It's like, I don't think it's fair. I don't think it makes sense to say God directly caused or caused deaths in the Bible. Commanded, yes. Like, let's say there was the killing of the firstborn child in, I forget where it is, but I'm slowly reading through the Bible, so eventually I'll be more familiar with the stories. But that happened essentially. But again, from what I remember, yes, that was mostly God. That was a plague, right? Seventh plague, right? And that happened because of disobedience, humanity disobeying God. Pharaoh, right? And Pharaoh? No, that was Joseph. Getting it mixed up. Anyway, I think you get my point. Which is essentially that, like, there's a reason why God commanded deaths. It's like very good reason for it. And we may never know all the reasons, but like, well, he's God, so there's this idea that God never makes mistakes and he's never wrong, and this is what I believe. So even if we can't understand why God commanded all these deaths, it's like, well, we have to kind of assume that God knows more than we do. And that he is good, which I can tell you from experience and the way he's changed my life, he is good. God is good. Anyway, I don't want to, I've talked about that in other videos, so I won't go in depth into that. But yeah, so hopefully that's an adequate answer to your question. How should that be understood? I think I answered that, yeah. It's really about remembering the fall and what happened in the Garden of Eden. Sorry, these fruit flies, man. All right, one belief that I strongly disagree with is the claim that if you don't believe in God, you will go to hell. This raises an important question for me. If I sincerely believe in the wrong God, because, well, first of all, there's only one true God, so I would say that. But if I sincerely believe in the wrong God because I was born into a different culture or religion, I'm told I could still be condemned. But if I honestly examine the evidence and conclude that I don't know which, if any, God is real, yeah, okay, I see. Why would that deserve eternal punishment? Imagine God asked me why I did not believe. My answer would be simple. There are thousands of religions and countless gods that people sincerely believe in. I had no reliable way of knowing which one, if any, was actually true. If free will is important, then I used the reason and critical thinking that I was given. Think of it another way. If you had a son you never met and he lived a good, kind, and honest life without knowing you existed, would you hate him because he didn't recognize you as his father? Or would you still love him because of the person he became? It's a great analogy, I think. Finally, the Bible describes God as a jealous God. If believing in another God provokes his jealousy, then someone who sincerely followed the wrong religion through no fault of their own would still be punished. That raises difficult moral questions about justice, fairness, and what an all-loving God would actually do. Right, so great stuff here. Like, I love it, these questions. And I've thought through them a fair bit, so I think I can provide a sensible, well-reasoned answer. That's what I'm going to try to do. So, let's go back here. If you don't believe in God, you will go to hell. Okay, so it raises an important question. I talked about there's only one true God, but I see what you're saying. So okay, let's talk about chances. Now, it is my conviction that God gives everyone a chance, if not more than one chance, meaning that he will, in one way or another, attempt to show himself, reveal himself to every single person. Now, see, so it talks in the Bible about this, and it says something along the lines of, no man can say he did not know God existed, for the creation which is around him is evidence. It's not the exact verse, but it's something like that. And obviously you could say, there's problems with that, and you could say that. But I will say that is the birds, the animals, the earth, the grass, the sun. It's all at least potential evidence for God's existence. Because it's like, okay, where did it come from? It came from somewhere. Now again, God is like the one exception to the rule, which I said this in one of my comments. Like, God has no origin. He's the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and end. First and last. That's the whole verse. I think it's in Revelation. And so he's the one exception. Because here's the thing about that too, which I wanted to mention. if literally everything has an origin, then things would just go on forever. That just doesn't make any sense, does it? Like everything has an origin, literally everything. Even God. Okay, so what created God? Okay, what created the thing or the person who created God, or the being who created God? Okay, what created that? Like you just keep going. So I feel like it's much more sensible and useful. Oh, sorry. Useful to say, okay, somewhere it has to stop. Before there was anything, there was one thing, we could say. It's a rough way of putting it, but there was one thing, and that was God. Of course, it says in the Bible, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, it also talks about waters, and darkness was over the face of the waters. Now, it's I'd say that's metaphorical language, right? Because water is potential, right? What does Bruce Lee say? If you pour water into a cup, it becomes the cup. Water represents potential. It represents movement. There's a dynamism to it. Everything that lives needs water. Well, maybe with some exceptions, but you get my point. And so essentially I would say, if we're analyzing that verse in Genesis, or is it in, well, it says it also in, what is it, Matthew, or no, not Matthew, John? One of the New Testament books. I think it's either Matthew or John, but yeah. And it's not Matthew, I'm pretty sure it's John. Yeah. All right. So in darkness was over the face of the waters. Okay, that is chaotic potential. So before there was anything, there was God and potential. Now, not as a physical thing, I don't think that's the right way of thinking about it, but as a kind of more of an abstract idea or concept. Oh, we have this pure potential. There could be all of these things, but none of it exists yet. It's just possibility, pure possibility. Benjamin Davies has actually talked about this a fair bit, so maybe check out his work. I've mentioned him a number of times, but yeah, Benjamin Davies, he created something called paraphilosophy. I think you'd probably find it very useful for trying to understand these things. I've found it useful. Still need to read more of his book. I've read like the first few pages anyway, but it's called The Shape of Knowledge. It's a great book so far. I really like it. I think he's a great writer and a great thinker. But anyway, so before anything existed, there was just God. To me, that makes a lot more sense than, literally everything has a cause. Because then it's like, you just go back and back and back. And it's like, doesn't there have to be a wall at some point? That's what makes sense to me. But I feel like there must be. And that would be God. Now, it's easy for me. Well, it's not easy, but it's simple for me. A lot simpler, I guess, because I've had the experience of hearing the voice of God before. And again, I've many reasons to believe it was not a hallucination. It was not some experience generated by my own consciousness or mind. And so one was just the sheer intensity of the experiences. I've had hallucinations before, every now and then. Like at one point when my life was particularly stressful, I had exploding head syndrome, which is really quite the phenomena. Quite the psychopathology, I guess. But and it's very intense, but this experience was way more intense. And I talked about it in my comment. Anyway, so I won't talk about it too much anymore. But so for me, it's simple. I know God exists. There's no doubt about that in my mind. There's zero doubt in my mind. And so, now, yes, there's still that part of me that sometimes thinks, what if God doesn't exist? But that's just because that's a part of my personality that always wants to question and know more. But I know he exists. So with that being said, okay, let's keep going here. If you honestly examine the evidence. Oh yeah, so I talked about, I believe before you die, God will give you chances, whether it's just someone who's a Christian you happen to bump into on the street who is like, hey, you heard about Jesus? And I believe God gives everyone the right amount of chances, I guess. And I guess that varies for each person depending on your heart, I would say. I would think that it depends on your heart. And if you're truly trying to understand the truth, God will try and reveal it to you. I mean, it says in the Bible, ask and you shall receive. That's that idea. Seek and you shall find, knock and the door will be opened unto you, or open to you. So that's what I would say about that. And it's that because really the idea is that the people who reject God, and despite all the evidence, they refuse God, they reject that he exists, or they maybe accept he exists, but refuse his gift, which is Jesus, the perfect gift, the Lamb, the Lamb of God. They reject that. Those are the people who go to hell. But again, I certainly believe this, that God gives everyone a chance. I mean, he gave me a chance. I thought about this earlier today. I got saved when I was 7, thank God. And I was raised in a Christian family, thank God again. But I often questioned my faith after that. And there was not so long ago, I was not living with God. I was not praying. I was not, maybe every now and then, but not in a real manner. I was living my own life, trying to just do my own thing without God. And it was not working. It really was not. And now that I'm not doing that anymore, and I am trying to live with God, walk with God, and understand the Bible and pray, read the Bible at least a little every day, things are way better for me. And so that's another idea, which is that if you believe that something is true and it changes your life, it improves your life, or it leads to an expansion of your consciousness or an increase in understanding, there's a decently high probability that that belief is true. Or however you're living your life, you're living in truth, or you're saying and believing what is true and what is good. That's kind of a psychological concept, I guess. And yeah, anyway, but so that's what I would say about that. It's the people who reject God that go to hell, because God has given them chances. So again, but I do believe God is good, and so he will give everyone at least a chance, And if you're genuinely seeking, well, again, it's the idea is seek and you shall find. You will find the truth. If you're genuinely seeking the truth, you will find it. And what is, oh gosh, I'm glad I thought of this. There's a term, I can't remember what it is, but I know what it translates to. So I'll look it up. Yeah, in filth it will be found. This is something to keep in mind. I thought it was, in sterquilinis inventur, or in stercor inventur. Right, which is the idea is that, Carl Jung kind of promoted it or put forth this idea, which is that what you most need to find will be found in the places that you least want to look. And so I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. So God's always in the background working. Sometimes you can't see him, but he's still working. And so, but I think if you look hard enough, and if you look in the places where you especially don't want to look, you'll see him. You'll see God there. It may take a while, but anyway, so I think I've said enough here. I don't want to just start talking too much where I'm just saying words. Okay. All right, now that's a fair point, right? Free will is important, right? So I'm glad you talked about that, free will. Fair enough, but again, just kind of going back to that, I believe God gives everyone a chance. He gave me a chance, and I'm glad he did. So that's some evidence I have. I know you don't have that because I'm me and you're you, but we're not so separate though. That's another thing. Separation is an illusion, but we've experienced different things, and so I know God gave me a chance. Okay, that's pretty strong proof that he's good. God is good. And he is, but I'm trying to figure out how to best communicate that. And I'll just say that. That's how I know God is good. These flies, man, I swear. All right, think of another way. Okay, yeah. Okay, so this, I would say for good analogy, good comparison, I would say, if the father attempted to communicate to the son that he was his father, but the son continued to reject him and either act like his father didn't exist, or that, he just continually hated his father or rejected his father, then that would actually be more accurate analogy, I think. Although I do like the analogy. So And okay, would you still love him because of the person he became? It's interesting. Well, I guess it's a matter of kind of hierarchy of importance or value. All right, so living a good, kind, and honest life without knowing you existed. Okay, so let me think about that. I guess I'm not convinced one can genuinely live that sort of life without believing in God, or without at least acting as if God exists. They may say they don't believe in God, but I'm not sure that someone, maybe they can, but I'm not sure that a person can live that sort of life without at least acting as if God exists. And I do think what we act out is the deepest form of belief, I think. And I'll maintain that position until I see evidence otherwise. And the reason I think that is because, well, beliefs shape perception. Perception shapes action, essentially, or kind of determines action. That's probably a better way of thinking about it. So, okay, here we go. We're close. This is almost the entire comment. Okay, I think I was a good. I just trying to make sure I addressed every question. Finally, the Bible describes God as a jealous God. Okay. Raise difficult. Yeah. So, I guess I hate to repeat myself again, but it goes back to God gives everyone a chance to show Himself as the one true God to everyone, and so, still be punished. So in that case, I would say, well, if someone did that, they would not go to hell. I don't think, because God knows your heart. But I guess it kind of goes back to seek and you shall find. If you're genuinely searching, but I guess you're saying if you follow Buddhism, for example, and you genuinely believe that that's the way, the one truth. Hold on, what is this? What? Oh, this guy was on Peterson Academy, I think. Anyway, I was like, I recognize that guy. So, yeah, if someone say is a Buddhist and they die believing in Buddhism fully, I guess I'm not sure that they can, let's see here. Think about this. Justice, fairness, and what all of God would actually do. So I would say, yeah, God would have, at least on a few separate occasions, if not multiple times, tried to show that person, that Buddhist, that Buddhism is not the way to, let's say, eternal life or heaven. So that's what I would say. Now, it's kind of impossible as another person to know if God has done that. Like, you kind of have to ask the person, but even if they tell you, I don't think God has done that, it's like, it doesn't mean God necessarily hasn't. Maybe they were just arrogant or not paying attention. Not necessarily. I'm not saying like that, but could be, sorry. But I do believe in a just God and that He is fair, just, and all loving. I do believe that. So it's very hard. Because again, when you're talking about, if we assume God is all knowing, and I want to talk about that as well. And hold on, you mentioned Cain and Abel, and hold on, did I address that? I don't know if I did. Whatever. But if He's all knowing and He's good, then where was I going with that? Let's see. Yeah, like justice will occur if someone is genuinely searching for the truth and they genuinely believe that something isn't true, and they die genuinely believing something that's false, but they were truly searching for the truth. Then I would say, yeah, they it's difficult because maybe I'll just say I don't know, because if I say they're not going to go to hell, I don't exactly believe in reincarnation, but I also don't know a whole lot about like the afterlife. So perhaps God would give them a second chance. I'll just say that. So they wouldn't go to hell, but they wouldn't go to heaven. Perhaps that would occur, or does occur, I guess. Assuming that that's happened. Like, there have been people who have, sincerely followed the wrong religion, we'll say. Although again, I don't see Christianity as a religion. I see it as the truth, simply the truth, and the one way to eternal life. So again, the truth, I guess, is in Jesus, through Jesus, and because of Jesus. If that makes sense. So okay, I think I properly addressed that. Now, as far as the Cain and Abel thing, and you were saying you said something about, it wasn't this comment, but there was another comment, right? And you talked about how maybe there was another commenter who mentioned God knew that Eve would, because they're talking about free will. So maybe, I'll just address it quickly, or I'll try to. How long have I been going? I don't know, but so if God gave humanity free will, okay, we take that. But then God knew that Eve would eat of the tree of which He commanded Adam and Eve not to eat from, and then Adam would eat it. Adam would eat it too. So then it's why did God allow that to happen if He knew it would happen? Now, actually, I've addressed this in other videos, but I'll do it again real quick. It does. That is the reason why God essentially allowed sin to enter the world, was because He wanted humanity to have free will. He wanted us to have free will. But, and I think that's actually pretty much the answer, really. Because it's but God knew that the serpent would come into the garden and that Eve would eat of it. It's I would say He didn't necessarily know humanity would disobey Him. Now, wait, what? God didn't know? Okay. I think He could have known that. I think when you say God knows everything, it's difficult, because then it does make a lot of the stories in the Bible not make sense. It's if God knew this, why did God allow this? But I think a lot of it could be growth. He allows suffering, for example, because of growth, spiritual growth, and so people can get stronger. I think that's often a reason. But also, I would say, it sometimes seems as if God almost, it's kind of a funny thing to say, but God almost hinders His own perception. For example, because when He is walking in the garden and He asks Adam, where are you? And Adam's in the bushes, like a girl, hiding from God. It's God could have known, God's infinite. He could know exactly, oh, Adam's right over there, exactly there, but he asked, where are you? And so, and then, who, God, or Adam's I'm covering myself because I knew I was naked. And God's who told you were naked? And then again, God could have known, oh, it was the serpent. But it's almost God, and I couldn't tell you why, but it seems as if God sometimes chooses not to see into the future or the past, see what happened, or know something. Why exactly? I couldn't tell you, but that just seems to be the case, just based off stories in the Bible. So anyway, 43 minutes long. Well, I'm glad that you're, Sabrina Woldts. I'm glad that you're not some people who just watch a video for 3 minutes, or I don't know. Maybe you haven't watched my entire videos, or I think I almost stopped the recording. Maybe you haven't watched on some of the videos that you've commented on. Maybe you haven't watched the whole video. I don't know. Let me know if you have or haven't, I guess, but it's fine either way. But shoot, hopefully you'll watch this one all the way through. Chances are, if you're hearing me right now, you have, unless you skip to the end. Anyway, sorry. But yeah, thanks for the comments. Keep them coming. I do think we're getting somewhere. I'll say this. You've left a lot of comments. I've replied to many of them. And I'm willing to keep talking about this as long as I feel we are getting somewhere and we're not just going in circles. But I don't think we are. So I think you're asking some really good questions, thought-provoking questions. Definitely questions I had before I, back when I was just not walking with God. I was still saved, but I just was, basically abandoned God. I was doing my own thing. I definitely had a lot of similar questions. How can God really be good if there's all this suffering? But again, I addressed that a bit earlier, and I've talked about it in other videos. Anyway, I'm going to end this video now. Take care. All right. Have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.